I raised cattle on the rim of Antler Wash for 31 years before the sky ever gave me a reason to look at it twice. Before that, it was just weather up there, or stars, or the red dust the wind kicked up off the mesa in August. I want that understood first, because what I'm about to tell you sounds like a man who'd gone looking for something strange. I hadn't. I was looking for a heifer that had wandered off her water, same as any other September night. The lights started 3 weeks before I found her. Not lights like a truck on the county road, nothing with a beam you could trace back to a source. These moved wrong. They'd hang low over the wash for a count of 10, 20, 40, then slide sideways faster than anything with a wing has business moving, and go out like someone had closed a hand over a candle. I watched them from the porch the first few nights, told myself it was weather balloons from the old relay station, told myself a lot of things a rancher tells himself so he can go back to sleep and be up again at 5. By the second week I'd stopped sleeping through it. I'd walk out past the tank house in my boots and no coat and just stand there, waiting for the sky to do it again, the way you wait on a storm you can smell but can't see yet. I started drawing the shape of it, not the lights themselves, but the pattern they left behind in my head, a kind of spiral, tight in the center and loosening out. I carved it into a fence post out past the second gate without deciding to. My wife had been gone 4 years by then, so there was nobody to ask me why I was standing in the yard at 2 in the morning with a pocket knife. I want to be honest about that part. I don't have a good answer even now. The night everything changed. The lights didn't slide off like they always did. One of them came down. Not fast, not like a crash the way you'd picture a crash. More like something laying itself down carefully because it had no other choice left. I saw the flare of it drop behind the far rim of the wash and I got in the truck without thinking twice, which tells you something about the state I was in, because a sane man does not drive toward a light falling out of the sky at 1 in the morning. A sane man calls the county line and stays on his porch. I found the debris field before I found her. Not wreckage in the way a plane leaves wreckage. No smoke, no smell of fuel. Just scattered plates of some material that looked like hammered pewter, and felt warm to the touch, like they'd been holding the day's heat since noon, though the night was cold enough to fog my breath. I walked the wash with my flashlight for the better part of an hour before I heard it. Not a cry. A sound almost like wind moving through a length of pipe, low and even, coming from behind a slab of red rock. She was sitting with her knees drawn up, small enough that I took her at first for a child from the Ibarra place 2 sections over, out past her bedtime and lost. Then the flashlight caught her properly and I understood I was looking at something the county had no forms for. Her skin was the color of a canyon at last light, a gray-blue with a faint scatter of freckling across her cheekbones and down her thin arms that pulsed, very slightly, like the last coal in a stove. Her eyes were too large for her face in the way that made you want to look away out of some old instinct and then made you look back because you couldn't help it. She wore something like a jumpsuit, torn at one shoulder, the fabric a weave I'd never seen. She was not crying. She was not screaming. She looked up at me with an expression I'd call weary and watchful in the same breath, the look of something that had been running on nerve for a long time and had just now run out of road. I did not know the word for her people. I still don't, not really. She never gave me one I could pronounce, and I never asked in a way she could answer. I called her Senna, after nobody in particular, because a thing needs a name if you're going to keep it warm. I want to tell you I thought it through, weighed the wisdom of it, considered what a man is supposed to do when he finds something that fell out of the sky. I didn't. I took off my coat, put it around her narrow shoulders, and carried her to the truck the way you'd carry a lamb that had gotten itself stuck in a fence, because that was the only kind of carrying I knew how to do. She didn't fight me, which I've thought about a good deal since. A child that age, if age even means the same thing for her kind, which I doubt, ought to fight a stranger carrying her off into the dark, ought to kick and make the kind of racket that brings the neighbors out with a flashlight of their own. She didn't. She held very still against my chest the whole walk back to the truck, her breathing shallow and even, and once, when my boot turned on loose shale and I nearly went down with her, her whole small body went rigid with what I took for trust rather than fear, the stillness of something that has decided, against every instinct it owns, to let itself be carried. She didn't speak, not in any way I could call speaking. What she did instead was hum, a low, layered tone that seemed to come from somewhere under her collarbone rather than her throat, and the freckling along her arms would brighten and dim along with it, like she was saying something in a language made of light instead of sound. I learned to read some of it, the way you learn a horse's ears. A quick double pulse when she was hungry, a long, slow fade when she was tired. Once, the second week, when I sat with her on the porch step and didn't say anything at all, just let her watch the stars with me. The light along her arms ran soft and steady for a long time, and I decided that one meant something like peace, though I never got proof of it. I kept her in the old line shack past the second gate at first, then moved her into the house once I understood how cold the nights ran for something not built for our air. I told the 2 ranch hands who still worked for me that she was my sister's girl from Tucson, sent up on account of some trouble at home, and that she didn't talk on account of what the trouble had been. Neither of them pushed it. Out where I live, a man's family trouble is his own business, and that suited me fine, because I did not have an answer that would have survived a second question. There were good weeks in there too, before Corliss ever turned up the drive, and I don't want to leave those out just because the trouble came later and takes up more of the telling. She learned the names of things fast, not the words themselves, which she never used, but what a thing was for. She learned which gate led to the horses and would tug my sleeve toward it in the evenings, wanting to stand at the rail and watch them the way another child might want a story read twice. She learned to sit on the tailgate while I mended fence, handing me staples one at a time out of the coffee can, her freckled arms running a soft, even glow the whole while that I came to understand, eventually, was something like contentment, or as close to it as a creature built out of light instead of laughter could manage. There was an evening I caught her studying her own reflection in the dark kitchen window, turning her head slow side to side, and I wondered what she made of a face so different from the one she must have known before, and whether she missed it, and there was nothing in that wondering I could ever put a question to her about, so I let it be. What I did have, within a month, was a visit from a man named Corliss, who came up the drive in a government sedan with federal plates and a clipboard, representing what he called the Bureau of Land Continuity, Field Survey Division. He said there'd been unusual telemetry readings out of the old relay station, decommissioned since '61, but apparently still worth a man's salary to keep an eye on, and that his office was conducting a routine debris assessment of the wash on account of some meteoric activity. He used the word biologics. Twice in 4 minutes, in the flat, unhurried way of a man reading off a form, and both times my stomach went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. He asked whether I'd seen anything unusual. I told him I'd seen lights, same as half the county, and left it there. He asked whether anyone was staying with me. I told him about my sister's girl from Tucson, and he wrote it down without looking up, and I understood then that this was a man for whom the truth and the lie both went into the same file, filed under whatever he'd already decided to believe. He came back twice more over the following weeks, each time a little longer, each time asking to see more of the property than the time before. The second visit, he brought a younger man with him who said almost nothing and carried a case of instruments I didn't recognize and didn't ask about, and the 2 of them walked the wash for the better part of an afternoon while I stood at the fence line pretending to check water troughs that didn't need checking, watching them the way you'd watch a coyote circling too close to the calving pen, not close enough yet to shoot at, but close enough that you didn't look away. The third visit, he asked to see the house. I told him no. I want to be plain about what that cost me, because it wasn't nothing. Corliss did not raise his voice or make a threat you could repeat to a lawyer. He simply told me, in that same flat reading voice, that a man who refused a federal land assessment on a decommissioned parcel adjacent to a security corridor was a man inviting a great deal of federal attention, and that attention, once invited, did not always leave when asked. He said it the way you'd read a weather report. Then he got back in his sedan and drove off down the county road, and I stood in my own yard and watched the dust settle behind him, and understood I had maybe 2 weeks, if that, before he came back with more men and a warrant instead of a clipboard. I didn't sleep that night either, but it wasn't the lights keeping me up this time. Senna knew something was different. I don't know how much of it she understood, whether she'd caught the shape of Corliss's visits the way a cow catches the shape of a storm coming, some old sense for a pressure dropping, or whether she only knew that I'd gone quiet and short with worry and that quiet had a smell to it she recognized. Either way, the third night after Corliss's third visit, she came and sat by my chair while I sharpened a hoof knife I didn't need sharpening, and the light along her arms ran in a pattern I hadn't seen before. Quick, urgent pulses, like a man tapping his fingers on a table waiting for bad news. I told her, out loud, the way you'd talk to a dog that couldn't understand the words but could hear the tone, that I wasn't going to let them take her off to some room with a number on the door. I don't know what in that sentence she caught, but the pulsing slowed, and she leaned her head against the arm of my chair, and I sat there a long while, with my hand resting careful and light on her shoulder, feeling the small, steady warmth of her, thinking that whatever she was, wherever she'd fallen from, she had ended up, for now, in the one place in the whole county where a man still knew how to keep a thing safe without asking permission first. The lights came back 4 nights later, and this time there was no mistaking what they were. I woke to a sound like the air itself had thickened, a low pressure in my ears the way you feel a truck downshift on a grade before you hear the engine. I went to the window and the whole northern sky over the wash had gone the color of a struck match. Not fire, but something like it. A slow rolling curtain of light that had no single source I could point to. Senna was already awake, standing at the glass with both hands pressed flat against it, and the freckling across her arms and up her throat had gone from a low coal glow to something closer to a lantern, bright enough that I could see the veins of light branching under her skin, like the pattern in a leaf held up to the sun. I understood, standing there, that this was not a survey team. This was hers. I got her out of the house before I'd fully decided to. There wasn't time for deciding, only for doing, the way there's no deciding involved in pulling your hand off a hot stove. I knew Corliss had men posted somewhere along the county road. I'd seen a sedan idling near the cattle guard twice that week, patient as a buzzard, so I didn't take the truck. I carried her, the same way I'd carried her out of the wash the first night. Out the back of the property and along the dry creek bed that ran under the fence line where the wire had rusted through years back, and I'd never gotten around to mending it. My knees are not what they were at 31 years of ranching, and she was not so small anymore that carrying her was easy, but I did not once think about setting her down and turning back. We came up over the last rise above Antler Wash a little before 4 in the morning, and the light out there had gathered itself into something with edges. Not a shape I could describe to another man and have him believe me. Only a great slow silence with a brightness folded up inside it, hanging low over the exact spot where I'd found her plates of scattered metal a month before, like something come back for what it had lost. I set her down. She looked back at me once, and I want to tell you plainly, because it matters more to me than almost anything else in this account, that there was no fear in that look, none of the wariness she'd carried the night I found her. What was in her face was something closer to what a child wears leaving for her first day of school. Some mixture of readiness and the ordinary sorrow of a door closing behind her. She reached up and pressed 2 fingers, light as anything, against the back of my hand, the only time in that whole month she ever touched me first, and the freckling along her arm ran once, slow and warm, in the pattern I'd come to believe meant peace. Then she turned and walked toward the light, unhurried, the way you'd walk toward a friend waiting at a gate, and I stood on that rise with my coat still smelling faintly of her and did not follow, because some things a man is given to carry only part way. I don't know what happened after the light folded itself back up and left the sky over the wash empty and ordinary again, the way it had been ordinary for 31 years before that September. I never got proof she reached whoever was calling her home, and I have made my peace, mostly, with never getting it. Corliss's people searched the wash for another 6 weeks and found nothing they could put in a file, and eventually the sedan stopped idling at the cattle guard, and eventually the county went back to being a place where the sky was just weather. I still keep that fence post out past the second gate, the one I carved the spiral into before I understood what I was carving or why. I never sanded it down. Some nights, not often anymore, I walk out past it in my boots with no coat, the way I used to, and stand there a while looking north toward the wash, not expecting anything, just keeping the watch a man keeps for something he was given the privilege of loving for a season, and then asked, without a single word spoken aloud, to let go. I have never told this to anyone who'd believe it straight through without stopping to ask if I'd been drinking. I'm telling it now because I'm 74 and there's less to lose in the telling than there used to be. And because somewhere out past the edge of everything I understand, there is a small gray-blue girl who once pressed 2 fingers to the back of my hand like a promise, and I would like it written down, in case it's the only marker she ever gets, that for 1 September, a man on the rim of Antler Wash chose her over every clipboard in the state, and would do it again tonight if the sky asked him to.